All right, welcome back into Carps Corner. I know it's been a long time, folks, and we wanted to catch up. Had a super busy weekend. When you got friends that are turning 40 years old and you're starting to get to that age, you got a million parties to go to. You got all kinds of things that seem to be happening weekend after weekend after weekend. Spent a great weekend up at Catawba. Really enjoyed it. Got to connect with some of my wife's friends from college, their husbands. They're awesome people, and really enjoyed it. So I tell everybody this: life is short. Don't wait until you're retired to start enjoying it. Everybody wants to say, well, I'll do this then, or I'll do that then. And one of my good friends and neighbors, he's like, why do you want to wait until you're 65, until you're 60 to ultimately enjoy something? Why not enjoy it as you go? Don't go crazy. Don't blow it everywhere, but try to enjoy it. So that's what we did. Went up to Catawba, celebrated a big 40th birthday for a good close friend. And a lot of people we haven't seen in a long time. And I will tell you this, some great advice. I used to watch my dad. He played in the NFL for 10 years. I talk about him a lot. He would go hang out with the late, great Randy Walker, former head coach at Miami Northwestern. My dad's, college travel roommate on the road. And when I'd watched him get together and he had other friends, Sherman Smith, these guys who played, I watched him hang around guys he played with in the NFL. It was like I was getting a chance to watch my father and watch my dad when he was 20 years old, when he was 25 years old. I got a window into what he was like, because when you're around friends from your youth, all of a sudden you all of a sudden go back. You're restored to that age. You don't look the same. Maybe you don't feel the same, but the stories start flowing. You get to have an awesome time. And so I got a chance to get to know what my dad was like when he was younger, when he was my age, in my 20s, and then in his 30s when he was playing, talking to guys and watching him interact and them tell stories about him and how he would just react to everything that was happening. And it was truly a pleasure. And so that's why I enjoy going back, getting to hang out with college friends, college teammates. And I encourage everybody to do that, because it's a little slice of nostalgia that it's going to give you. And you're really going to enjoy it. And it will make you feel young. If only for a couple of days, you're going to get a chance to feel really stinking good. So enjoy that. I did. Problem is, I got back, rolling blackouts in Columbus. It was a disaster. I didn't have power. No, with no power comes no internet. Can't get the lighting, computer. I'm trying to charge. There was all kinds of issues. So I'm back. I think things are good. I think we're pushing in a positive direction. And so I'm finally able to bring you something that I truly enjoy doing. And like I said, the response has always been super positive. Make sure you like it. Please subscribe, share this thing around as we can continue to grow the viewership there. A couple of things I want to get to here today. A lot of stuff has been happening. The former Buckeye, current Washington commander, Terry McClaurin, set out a mini camp, talk about the importance of that. Lamar Jackson was at mini camp for the Baltimore Ravens, entering the final year of his contract. What does that all ultimately look like? Marcus Freeman, former teammate of mine, head coach at Notre Dame, coached at Ohio State, GA there, Cincinnati, Purdue. It's been around. He had some comments that upset some of the Ohio State faithful. He came on my radio show on Wednesday morning, texted me, wanted to clear it up. So have a little bit of what he had to say, what frustrated everybody, and then ultimately what he came on and said, how he cleared that all up. Kirk Herbstreit was on with me and Jacob Hester on Off Campus on XM84. He had some pretty interesting comments, and Kirk is as locked in on college football as anybody you're going to find. And I like it because he's a traditionalist. He's someone who was super against, I think, NIL for a long time, was not a proponent of the transfer portal and everything that was going on. All of a sudden, things start changing, things start happening. He has kids now. The two of his boys play at Clemson and Ohio State. His youngest is, going to be a college player as well. So his perspective changed and where he thinks it's all going, because I think it's a very interesting place. And then the last piece, something I don't want to talk to. We start talking about mascot changes. I understand we're in a sensitive time, and there are some things that are offensive in this world, but there's also times now where we've gone crazy and kind of lost our minds with where everything's going. But I want to start off with Terry McClaurin. So we'll throw this up here. It's courtesy of my guy, Ed Warner at ESPN, cover me in Dallas. Washington head coach Ron Rivera says the team has been actively negotiating contract extension with Terry McClaurin, and that dialogue has never been contentious. He ruled out any potential trading of the player and indicated a deal could be reached soon. And so here's the deal. Daniel Snyder obviously has a lot of issues going on with Washington. They just traded for Carson Wentz. He's their new quarterback. They're not all that popular. They went from having one of the biggest stadiums for a long time that they had a super long wait list to now, I don't know if that even exists. And they're proposing building the smallest stadium in the NFL, around 55,000 seats. So there's not a lot of goodwill built up in the nation's capital for the Washington Commanders. However, Terry McLaurin is that slice of goodwill. They're able to draft him outside of the first round. He is a phenomenal human being, and he's been a tremendous player and been great as a rookie despite, and early in his career, despite a number of quarterbacks spinning around. Here's why Terry McLaurin is going to get a deal done. They have to do it for him. He's basically the de facto face of the franchise. When you want to hear a soundbite, and if you're the Washington Commanders, there's someone you want to get up to the podium and get a message across, it's either A, your head coach, Ron Rivera, who is a former player and has had a lot of success, or B, that other guy is Terry McLaurin. He's intelligent. He's well-spoken. He's a great player. He does everything the right way. And in the NFL, you want to reward guys who do it all like that. Because by paying someone, you're not just simply paying a contract and deciding how much they're going to get. You are rewarding their behavior on the field, but also their behavior off. And Terry McLaurin exemplifies everything you want in a player. And he plays the position that's the biggest diva position of all in wide receiver. And so when you get a dude right there who's a really good player, who does it all the right way, you pay the guy. I played with Calvin Johnson, played with Terrell Owens, Terry Glenn, some great receivers, man. My man, Brandon Marshall. All those guys, great dudes. But I will say this about Calvin Johnson. Calvin Johnson was the best receiver I ever played with. And I played with Hall of Famers. And part of it was he was such a great human being. He would do everything for you on the field. It was unstoppable. But he was a great team guy. Played hurt, played injured, never complained. Wasn't Stafford's fault if the ball was high. Didn't blame the O-line if there wasn't enough protection. Didn't get upset with the defense if he gave up a touchdown. Guys would go up in the locker room. You need him to sign a ball. You need him to sign a jersey. You want to have a conversation. You crack a joke. Calvin was one of the dudes. So while Terry McLaurin may not be Calvin Johnson, he's a great human being. And they need him in that locker room. They need his production on the field. But more importantly, they need him out there to be that dude that you can trot out and be able to put in front of a camera and be the face. So that deal will get done. And so him not being in minicamp, yeah, it hurts. But listen, I don't blame the guy. He's on the threshold of getting $20 million plus a year. You don't want to blow your ACL out before that contract is signed. And Washington knows they need to get it signed. So staying right there, right outside of the nation's capital, you go a little north to Baltimore, you got Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's won an MVP, been a really good quarterback, does it a little bit differently, a little unorthodox, maybe not quite the pocket passer, one of the most phenomenal athletes you're going to find. Represents himself, by the way. Lamar Jackson does not have an agent, which is very critical to understand. So he's been around. He's been doing everything they asked for the most part. They need to get a deal done with Lamar Jackson because he's the quarterback. So whether he sits out of OTAs or not, comes to minicamp or not, he's your quarterback. And so they delayed in paying him. And in doing so, you get the Josh Allen contract. Matt Stafford gets an extension. Aaron Rodgers gets an extension. You see Deshaun Watson get traded and ultimately get a fully guaranteed extension. So Baltimore has done this to themselves. I've always said this: if you have a player that you think is the guy, especially at an elite position, it's better to pay him early, because in doing that, you're going to get a discount. Now, you're never going to be 100% sure on a guy, but if you pay him early, you're going to avoid the contentious negotiations of going into the final year of your deal, franchise tagging. Do they want me? Do they not? You can always say it's business, but when it's your business, it's always personal. And that's the reality of it. And so Lamar Jackson is going in the final year of his deal, his 5th-year option. They can throw the franchise tag on him. Franchise tagging quarterbacks doesn't work. Look what happened with Kirk Cousins in Washington. It becomes ridiculous. And so they waited, and now they're going to have to pay the piper. And if I'm Lamar Jackson, I want the Deshaun Watson deal, maybe even a little more, because I've won an MVP. You did this to yourselves in Baltimore, and this is the problem. The chickens are coming home to roost now, and so they need to get a deal done with him, because without him, I'm not sure what type of team you have. I mean, he sat out some last year. He had COVID issues and all these things, and I understand you feel good about your backup, but he's not Lamar. And so I'm not saying you need to be signing him to a 10-year deal like you do in Major League Baseball, but he needs a 5-year deal. And if I'm him, I want it fully guaranteed. He's bet on himself. And if you take it into the season, it's probably going to be a pretty steep cost. So Lamar, he's going to be getting his cash. All right. I want to get into the Marcus Freeman situation. We'll throw that up. So this is in an article by Dennis Dodd, and this came out, early this weekend, late last week, and said, to make his point about Notre Dame's academics, Freeman brought up the 2 most significant football stops in his career before coming to Notre Dame in 2021. At Ohio State, Freeman played defensive back, not true linebacker, for Tressel, eventually becoming a 5th-round draft choice to the Chicago Bears. At Cincinnati, he earned a reputation as one of the nation's best defensive coordinators. Now, quoting Marcus, you don't go to class aside at places like Ohio State, rhetorically. You take some online classes, show up for your appointments. At Notre Dame, you're forced to go to class every day, go to class, end quote. Now, I had Marcus on my show, texted me, reached out. It was like I was misquoted. So he goes, I asked for the audio of our conversation. Dennis Dodd sent it to him. And he read the transcript. And basically what he said, he's like, played Ohio State, 60,000 students, Cincinnati, 30, 40,000, these huge state schools. If you don't go to class there, no one at the university notices. You're getting checked by your coaches, but no one at the university notices. I went to Ohio State. You have 200 and 300 person lecture halls. It's like at Notre Dame, a school of 8,500 people, students, you may have 30 students in a class. Your teachers notice if you're not there. And you have small classes when you get to Ohio State, when you get into your major and different things, depending on what it is. But if you want to be high and be anonymous, you can. So people were furious about that, but I thought he explained it pretty well. And he talked about Notre Dame's value proposition. When you go there, I asked him about rooming with non-athletes, staying in dorms for more than a year, all these things, getting players to South Bend. It's like, yeah, you may room with a non-athlete your freshman year. That person may end up becoming a CEO of a company. I get it. That's a value proposition. I like it. For me, that would have been important. However, Notre Dame was not good when I was coming out. And so that's what kind of eliminated them from the selection set. And their facilities were trash. Their facilities are better. They may not be the elite, the best of the best, but they're in a better spot. And so while everybody was hammering down on Marcus Freeman and going after him, I wanted to give him an opportunity to come in. I thought he explained it well. And he was very, very responsive about what his 2 degrees he got from Ohio State and what they mean and how important they are to him. And he went to class when he was at school for the most part. I went to class when I was there. I've been a professor there for the last 4 years. J.K. Dobbins, playing for the Ravens, 2nd-round draft pick, elite running back at Ohio State, went to the business school. It's a tough program at Ohio State. Talked about dropping out. I told him stay in it because anything worthwhile is going to be hard. If it wasn't, it wouldn't be worthwhile. I'd see him leaving class, Every Monday and Wednesday when I was walking out of my class, we'd have conversations in the evening in the spring about it. It was days they didn't have practice and spring ball. I'm like, and I'm glad he stayed in it. And he's going to eventually graduate from there. And I think he was come back working this year. But guys go to class. They go to class everywhere. The coaches make sure they do. Now, there might be some places we can go online and you don't have to do anything. But the reality is, if something matters and it means something, it's going to be difficult. And that doesn't matter to every player. But there are guys out there. So it's Marcus's value prop was recruit the right people, bring in the right people. I think Ryan Day does that at Ohio State. They do it as well as anybody. Bring in guys who, yeah, we get some NIL cash. We also want to be developed for the NFL. We want to be trained. We want to work. Oh, and by the way, we're going to make sure you go to class. We're going to connect you with people in the community. And so if you don't play professional football, you're going to have a great life opportunity in front of you. And even if you do, like myself, you're going to be able to be connected to people in the community, very influential people, to be able to have more opportunities. So that's another value proposition. So I thought Marcus did a good job. Former teammate of mine, he's a friend. I try to be fair, try to be honest, ask some tough questions. Some people thought they should have been harder, whatever. Try to do what I try to do and try to do it well. Had Kirk Herbstreit on this week, and Kirk had some interesting comments on XM84 off campus with me and Jacob Hester. And Kirk is his tight end, 27 years covering college football. He has 4 boys, all college age, 2 of them currently playing at Clemson, Ohio State. One of them is down at St. X in Cincinnati. So Kirk was always, against kind of a lot of the things that were happening in college football over the years. When I talked to him, we have him on shows, everything like that. But he's on board now. And one of the things that he was saying and he was advocating, it's like, here's the deal. NIL, I don't think people should be paid before they've done anything in college, which I agree with. And I think a lot of people agree with that for the most part. You go to school, you work hard, you play well, you get some dollars. But he said he thinks a lot of this will eventually change when you have the contract rights for the CFP come up 2025, 2026. It's like, that's when it will ultimately all change, because there's going to be big dollars coming in. You have streaming services coming in that will give the players an opportunity there. And you get lawyers involved and advisors and all these things, but it's going to give people there, the players, a chance to collectively bargain and get a revenue split, whether it's 50-50, 70-30, 60-40, whatever that ultimately looks like. Because there's going to be even more dollars created, because you're asking guys now to go from a 12-game season, conference championship. Right now it's semifinal, final. So if you're one of the 2 teams, you're playing 15 games. And none of those other games are going away. So colleges want the revenue for the 12-game season. They want the TV revenue for the conference championship games. You're going to expand the playoff. You're talking 16, 17 games potentially. Everybody wants a piece of that. So the players should ultimately get in a piece of that. And he said, hey, you collectively bargain it. You get some dollars funneling your way to the players. They kind of become de facto employees then at that point. It's going to change the structure. But then you can ultimately have rules. And the rules right there will be really good, because now you'll be able to dial in on the transfer portal window. You'll still have some flexibility, but you'll be able to have serious constraints. NIL, you'll be able to build constraints around that, things that are collectively bargained. The players agree about, the coaches, university presidents, whoever it is, they'll agree about it as well. And there'll be some give and take, and that's how it's going to operate. But it's going to take some time to get there. And there'll probably be some Band-Aids placed along the way. As we see the transfer portal windows coming into effect now, there'll probably be some guidance, I think, around name, image, and likeness. But you're not going to get Congress to agree on anything. Not now. Not heading into the midterms. And maybe out of next year, you could get something in 2023. Maybe. I don't know. But I wouldn't rely on them. It's going to probably take till 24, 25, and you're going to get that negotiation going. And at that point, you might see a new governing body formed. And whether it's the 5 Power 5 conferences, whether it's all 10 football conferences, whether it's, 7 or 8 decide to go, you'll see something happen. I think that'll kind of change the landscape of college football. But Kirk Herbstreit, who is a big time traditionalist, was talking about all of these things and how the changes are going to happen. Collective bargaining is going to be here, and it's going to come with the college football playoff expansion. All of that is going to be tied together. Players will probably negotiate a piece of the media rights, which are going to be huge. You'll be able to put constraints around NIL. You'll have limits to that and limits to transferring, and that will help build some rules. Because right now, college football is essentially a rudderless ship. Nick Saban has talked about it. A bunch of coaches have complained, but they don't have the power to do anything. And that's a big part of it. You have to have the power to be able to get something done legislatively, and they're not there. And so they're going to have to do it on their own. But the only way that will happen is with those new TV rights being negotiated. When that happens, we'll see where it all goes. So it's been a pleasure to be back with all of you. Thank you. The feedback has been tremendous. Except if there's any questions, stuff you want me to talk about, throw it out there. I love it. And there's a lot more things we got to get into, but I try to keep these digestible and short. So we'll get into some more stuff here next week. So you guys enjoy it. And thank you for listening to Carps Corner.